Meeting to order at 5:30. Any adjustments to the agenda?
I have none.
Okay. Select board announcements, comments? Anything? Public comments?
Can I just,
Yes.
I guess this is where I can announce this. So the LCT on their website, they have a webinar coming up, training ordinance adoption and enforcements on July 16th. Also, in the mail, got this wonderful brochure. Talks about select board handbook, select board responsibilities, networking, resources. So I'm going to share this with select board.
But also through the LCT?
It is through the LCT, so if you go to the website, you should be able to find.
I think I also got this.
I'm just sharing education.
Anything? Public comment on items not on the agenda?
Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Fairman.
at one of your upcoming meetings, the new Putney Selectboard Rules of Procedure will be coming up. And I have some, and by the way, I realize it's a work in progress and also a good work in progress. But I do have I'm going to offer a couple of contributions very briefly. The first one is, referring to the draft rules, sections D and sections E actually copy or paraphrase the Vermont Open Meeting Law, but don't say so. Now, Section A says these rules may be amended by a vote of the board. Well, in fact, in the case of sections D and E, that is not true because Vermont is a Dillon's Rule state. Now, I realize that Dillon's Rule has come up now and then. I have a handout for you, which is the Vermont Supreme Court and their latest statement of what Dillon's Rule is. And there's really nothing new about it other than it's the latest because they always say the same thing, what's sometimes called boilerplate. The other thing is, it used to be common that these meetings would open with a statement that this is a meeting in the public, not of the public. Now, actually, it is a meeting with the public, as the full Vermont Supreme Court bench have unanimously stated as binding precedent in Severson versus City of Burlington that, I quote, Vermont's open meeting law implements the command of Chapter 1, Article 6 of the Vermont Constitution. Now, I'm not going to read it all out to you, but I'm going to share with you a handout that includes everything they said, which basically you will learn that it is a meeting with the public because it is a constitutional right not only for the public to be heard, but also for you to hear. So I don't need to interrupt the meeting to distribute these now, but I will pass them to the town manager and she can pass them along. And that takes care of that. Thank you. Oh, you want them now? Good.
Thank you, Howard.
You're welcome.
All right. Approval of the minutes from May 28th, 2025.
Move to approve the minutes of May 28, 2025 as drafted.
Second. I'm good with them.
Pretty good. All in favor?
Aye.
Your motion for the warrants to the treasurer.
Make a motion to approve and execute the warrants to the treasurer upon completion of the hearing. Second.
Karen?
Payroll warrant dated June 13, 2025, in the amount of $20,519.92. So we did catch up on the fire department. Because the last time we didn't have timesheets. Their payroll for 4 weeks was $2,524.09. So, approximately 165 hours of emergency services. You good?
Yeah.
Okay. Accounts payable dated May 31st through June 13, 2025 in the amount of $83,793.05. So on this warrant, you will see some prepaids. So technically, they're due in July, but that's the next fiscal year. In the next warrant, you'll see the same trend. But what'll happen is we'll journal entry before the end of August with our auditor's help to offset, to make sure those expenses are accredited to the right fiscal year.
Anything of particular note in the accounts payable?
No, Fletcher, I don't have anything like, oh my God, or unusual.
What is the CVOEO grant disbursement?
So that is a grant, and 2 people had expensed their own money,
Gotcha.
and that is reimbursement to those 2 people.
Champlain Valley Office of Economic Opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Anybody else on anything? All in favor? Aye. Town manager's report.
Oh man, where is this? I lost it already. So fire department, they wrote a grant application through the Good Neighbors Firefighter Safety Program. This was a 3-day like turnaround on this grant. It was on VLCT's homepage too.
It was?
Yes,
Missed it.
I usually don't go there, and I did, and I found it. I'm like, all right, let's take a look at this. So, yeah, they wrote the application, sent it in, and if the town is awarded, we could see $10,000 towards, fire department equipment, gear, whatever.
Pretty open-ended.
Yeah, yeah. So, I just want to say thank you for taking that on. The folks at the department did that.
That's awesome.
I'm like, if you need anything, let me know, but they took charge, which was great. The department is also pricing out AEDs for public buildings. And they are working on a dry hydrant application for grant funding, which is due like August 1st. So, there's activity down at the department and things are happening and it's all positive. Pool update. The pool. So Rick Pettit is up there. He's got the drains out. He found the broken pipe underneath. So that's been repaired. The new drains are in and cemented. He came today, but there was water covering the drains, so he couldn't really fiberglass. So that water's been pumped out. It'll be dry for him tomorrow as long as it doesn't rain. So he's gonna fiberglass and fix the crack and he should be done by tomorrow. Which means that we can fill the pool. Fingers crossed, when we turn the pumps on, everything functions. and then we get the chemicals in there, and I'm still hoping for, Wednesday next week, the 18th, for the school graduation party, but our official open date is Saturday, the 21st. So a lot of work is going on up there. The new doors are being installed at the moment as well. They came in on Monday. So the front and the back, the double steel doors, it was more of a project than they thought it was gonna be. Bergeron Construction is doing the work. They have like 4 folks up there working side by side,
On doors.
and they're coming back tomorrow. So hopefully that'll be complete tomorrow as well. There was some winter damage that's being repaired by 2 of our highway department folks because it needed to be dealt with. So new gutters on the pool house. And then there was a fence or like a stockade like fence near the bathroom that kind of blocks the door. That got broke and the wood was rotted, so they've got that fixed. They're picking up all the brush tomorrow, taking that out of the parking lot, and then we'll mow and we should be ready to go. So, lots going on at the pool. Grievance day is set for June 18th. You contact the lister's office if you have questions about grieving your assessments. Jordy, what time is that?
Starts at 9, and if people want to grieve in person, they should let us know. We have appointments every 20 minutes.
You can also go on our website because all of the information and details are on our website. Working with FW Web on a pilot program, so we have 6 locations in town on our municipal water system. They've been identified and will receive a new automated water meter with cellular endpoints. So we're gonna test them out, see how well they work compared to our current program, which cannot be updated. So hopefully it works, and we'll look at the bottom line. I'm gonna ask for a quote to do all the meters. But there's certain meters that are different sizes based on, you know, if it's commercial or residential, so we're just gonna nail down the list, but I'll be coming back to the board on that. Let's see, we have 10 active grants right now.
Wow.
10, and 3 applications that have been submitted or will be submitted. So it's a lot. It's a lot of work, but we're managing it. We did submit the FY '24 municipal planning grant for reimbursement. So the state reimburses 60% of the contract award, and that was for the housing needs assessment study. So not only are we managing, but we're putting in reimbursements too. Town hall update, the team has met twice in the last few months, and don't remember when I had a report last, but we have a preliminary cost estimate for the renovation of town hall. And we've just received an updated one, a more detailed layman's terms one that we can understand. The team will meet to go over the numbers, and then the Renew Town Hall team will meet to discuss funding and bring back a more detailed report to the board and to the public. But, yeah, so that's my report.
Question, on the pool, like in the spectrum of Band-Aid to new pool, where does, like, you think the pool stands, or like, what's the life of the current pool?
Well, seeing as we just fiberglassed the whole thing, 2 years ago, And now the drains are gonna be fixed, so it could last a while, but my recommendation is we put it in the capital plan and we start thinking about whether, you know, we look for a new site, new pool, but that's probably like 5 years down the road, Bex. I wouldn't say that's like around the corner, unless, you know, the pump house too. I mean, everything is aging and, you know, we keep pushing it every year.
Yeah,
And if the water hadn't left the pool, we probably wouldn't be having these Band-Aid fixes. So the fact that we, you know, found the leak in the source and now it's gonna be fixed. But the true test would be in the fall if we lose any water.
yeah. It just sounds like it was like a significant repair, which is hopeful if it will last the season or maybe more.
Yeah, I mean, there's 1 year COVID, the pool didn't open because it had a crack, but
Yeah,
I blame that on COVID.
fair.
And it, you know, kept me out of hot water. But, yeah, we're gonna have to really start thinking about, it needs to go into the capital plan, need to have a number to go along with it. And then go from there.
What would be the rationale for moving the pool? Why have it in a different location?
So that property is a postage stamp. There, you can't do anything over there because of the wetlands, you can't expand it. The pool house is old, you know, so, and we have to be careful, so if we, like, remove the pool house, let's just say we demo that, you know, because it's in the wetlands, you know, we're gonna look at our zoning. And, you know, so it can be a challenge because there's not much land there. And it's on a hill already, it's, so.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because it's a nice central location that everybody's used to, so.
Right next to the school too.
Yeah. But, you know, the pool, it's an odd shape. Everything is plumbed underground. So if anything breaks, like on the far end of that pool, underground, it's gonna be a job to, you know, dig things up. And I think it was the second year, Fletcher, that the pipe shattered from the pool house across the lawn. And that was like, it was just weeks before we were gonna open. And the highway department did go down, dig them up, and we laid new pipe. But, you know, it just seems like every year I'm like, I cringe, I'm like, please work, please work. It gets us through, you know, but a new one's gonna be costly.
Sounds a lot like opening my camp, you know?
Right. That's all I have.
Yeah,
Yeah.
great. Boards, committees, and
Mr.
commissions.
Chairman,
Yes.
apologies for interrupting. First, two points for our town manager. First, can you tell us the current total estimate for of the cost of renovating this town hall?
The preliminary number,
Yeah.
I'm gonna say it's roughly 2.5 million.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And the other point, Mr. Chairman, is a clarification. At our previous meeting, it turned out afterward that our town manager and I had misunderstood each other regarding a comment that I made, which had to do with the pump house on Sand Hill Road and the driveway that goes down to the well. There in fact is no gate there, nor is there a cable, nor are there any posts for them to be set up. I am strongly suggesting that really that should be barred to public access because what's down there is our public water supply.
Yes. I can coordinate with the highway department and or the fire department. Might be a good training. Well, no, I'm being serious. I mean, it'd be good for the folks to know, you know, where the pump house is and, you know, the well. Storage tank, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so, but I'll coordinate to make sure there's something, either bollards and a cable or.
That would be good.
Thank you, Howard.
Thank you, Mr.
You're
Mayor.
welcome.
Sorry for the confusion too.
Oh, these things happen.
Alright, planning commission status report, let's use some.
Good evening, everyone at home and everyone here in the room, and select board members. This is my monthly report from the Planning Commission, and it's really an overview of what we're working on and what we're doing. The topics are the zoning bylaw modernization project, which we're in the midst of, the comprehensive village plan, a recently awarded grant, and our next steps, the housing needs assessment, a status report towards implementation, and a couple of questions, and just our list of upcoming Planning Commission meetings, so you have them. And on the zoning bylaw modernization, we are well down the road on this project. We had a meeting with the Project Advisory Committee for this at our monthly meeting on June 3rd. And at that meeting, we were reviewing several articles. That's been our process. In each of the meetings with the Zoning Advisory Committee, we're taking a chunk of the bylaws and the subdivision regulations and reviewing them. So we had Articles 4, which are planned districts, general regulations, special regulations, and then subdivision regulations, which are a different set of rules related to the zoning bylaws, but not part of the zoning bylaws, and we're updating those too. Just a reminder, our goals for this update are easing administrative review so that enable more applications to be reviewed by the zoning administrator versus the development review board. So making more things, particularly in housing, permitted where that's clear. So that's been a very focused effort. Complying with new state requirements, of which there are many. The bylaws have been updated every year. There are little updates because that's how it happens at the state level. And this is a major update, and we're trying to incorporate all those things in. And I guarantee you the minute we're done, we'll have more ones that will be coming to us. Excuse me.
Yeah, I was just going to, she was handing me this. Sorry to interrupt.
That's all right. So that is a focus. Facilitating new housing and economic development with a focus on the village center and the neighborhood development area while protecting natural resources and conservation areas. So those are our overarching guidelines for what we're doing. And in the big picture, the things we talked about at this last meeting were more minor adjustments to align with those things. There were not really big issues that we took on. At the next meeting, we'll take on, for example, a brand new district, a forest block overlay district, which goes with the town plan. We had the forest block, and this is complying again with how the state is approaching zoning. So that's in development. We'll be talking about that at the July 1st meeting. And we've been in discussion with the Conservation Commission and others. And I will say that is very challenging because there's a lot at play right now at the state level. The formation of the new Land Use Review Board, the other Act 181 modifications. But we're going to pursue an update based on the guidance that we have, understanding that probably within 2 months after that, there'll be some new things. But it's just always happening, so we're just going to do the best of it. We have some really very good people at the table on the advisory committee as well as the consultants. So at this last one, what I'm trying to do is make sure you have an awareness of what's going on, because this comes back around to you when we're done. And so I give you section by section, just little short statements about what we're doing. So under approval requirements, we're updating the list of conditions to be preserved in terms of a parcel of land. And shorelands and steep slopes hadn't been on there or defined. And that is really something that should apply to all of the districts, not just to these planned districts. So that was pointed out, and that is a topic being updated. There was a section that's never been used about open space, removed town-dictated open space dedication method. Don't ask me exactly what that was, but it's never been used. And we decided that it's not common, it's actually not typical in zoning, and there is zero impact. So we're trying to reduce the regulations to only address what we need. Just some terminology update, moving from narrative master plan to project narrative, more inclusive language. The district use table is being updated to include these districts, the planned districts. So that will be, you'll see that in the district use table, which is a really wonderful new development in our regulations. It just makes everything make a lot more sense and easy to review. Right of way, we agreed to include review criteria for the select board's consideration of a landowner request to allow use of a class 4 town highway or trail as a right of way to access a land parcel. That is the select board's responsibility and authority to do that, but there have been no criteria for it. So we'll be developing those criteria for the select board's consideration. On accessory dwellings, we again are aligning with state definitions. No need for an accessory dwelling or residence to be owner occupied. There's a more general definition that we're using. We had an interesting discussion about how big can an accessory dwelling unit be. And on this whole idea of being more flexible and adaptive, accessible for people of all different needs, we are able to increase the definition to go from 30% of total habitable floor space, that's the state requirement, or the difference is to 1,200 square feet, whichever is greater. And that's increased from 900 square feet. And the conversation that we had, including folks from our advisory committee, saying, if you wanted to have somebody who had a wheelchair in the ADU, you need bigger hallways. You need more space to navigate and turn. You might need somebody to be there with you and assist you. So it's arbitrary. 900 feet didn't align with anything in particular, then that was the number being used. So that's an example of something that we decided we'll just make it bigger during the hearing process and vetting process. If some particular reason not to do that comes up. But we're trying to do things more by right. So that's one of the reasons to do that. Aligning with state requirements, we've updated language under residential care group homes and recovery residences to include recovery residences, and also 3 child care use categories, which we already visited with you when we looked at the district use table, because we put them in there as well. And number of parking spaces required. So we replaced the text, which was harder to read, with this simple table, which is much easier to read, that looks at minimum parking space required by use type. And in some cases, again, aligned with state requirements, it's slightly smaller. We're not increasing parking requirements. Public facilities, to comply with state requirements, we added emergency shelters and hotels, motels converted to permanently affordable housing. That is how the state is doing this, and that was an update to align with state requirements. Temporary parking of recreational vehicles, travel trailers. Well, it turns out that we had language that said in one place 4 months for camping and 6 months for camping. So we're clarifying that's 4 months for camping and 6 months for residential occupancy, which is the practice. So
What's the difference?
the difference between camping and residential occupancy? A camping is really meant somebody just staying there short term for camping. You might have guests coming. Residential occupancy is during that whole time somebody is living there, versus camping, which is part-time use. I guess that would be the difference. Yep.
Biggest campaign. Residential is reside.
I'm just wondering how one would tell the difference necessarily.
I think it has to do with how it's being used. If somebody's using it full-time, that would make it a residential use. But to stay any longer, you have to meet state requirements for sanitary code, fire safety, and all of that, septic, all of that, yes. But then, continuing in this conversation of flexibility, Section 606, temporary homes and offices during construction, allows people to keep a trailer or, some temporary home there during construction. And what we did is we updated the language to allow the zoning administrator to grant a year-by-year extension if there are no material changes to the application. Again, trying to simplify the administrative process. However, if somebody is staying there longer, and it's a more complicated problem, it would go to the DRB. So, an important conversation, it seems minor, but relationship of municipal permits to state permits. The question is the town responsible to, giving a permit to make sure that they've met state requirements or that they have a list of what the state requirements? And the answer is it's on the applicant to meet state requirements and to demonstrate that they've met them. So we're clarifying language about that in this. It's very difficult for the town to know necessarily the state requirements and whether they're being met or not.
Isn't the town's obligation just to say, have you got the permit?
Yes.
It's a state decides the permit.
That's
We
right.
just need proof that they got it from the state.
That is right. That is right. So the answer is we'll make the town's permit conditional on having the state permits.
So that would be the CO, you don't get the certificate of occupancy until.
Correct.
the permits.
That's right. So that's been clarified. So that's what we talked about in the last meeting. And again, I just want to say how much I appreciate the advisory committee and what they bring to the table and how useful the conversation is and respectful. And great to have different perspectives. And not everybody agrees on everything, but we do have a good exploration of the issues. Our next meeting is July 1st, and as already mentioned, that is going to be focusing on the Forest Block Overlay District and some related issues. And that will be our last one to review all sections. That is everything. And on July 22nd, Wyndham Regional Commission will issue their full set of proposed revised regulations, both bylaws and subdivision. The Planning Commission and the Advisory Committee, and this will be all public, will have then 6 weeks to review it before we meet in the first Tuesday in September 2nd, to adopt that as a draft to present at our community meetings in September and October, which are really educational, but also a discussion for feedback on it. It's not a hearing, it's more helping people understand it. We'll do part of the bylaws and regulations in one meeting, and the second meeting we'll take another one. I mean, it's over 200 pages, so it'll be even a lot to do in two-hour meetings. And we'll be accepting comments on that. And then, again, from there, we will adapt, we'll make whatever revisions and adopt a set of regulations and subdivision regulations for the public hearing. We hope to do that at our December meeting, so the hearing can be in January. So we're still on that schedule. We think the community meetings, actually I just confirmed with Karen today, that we can do them September 30th and October 14th, 2 Tuesdays. In over a 2-week period, we'll cover this with the public. So we're moving along. Feels like we're making good progress on it. And so that's that. Any questions on zoning?
Well, one observation, you want to see an open space example, look at the Putney Commons PRD declaration, which had mandated open space included in the declaration. In your paragraph 9 here, 510.2 parking spaces, that first line, residential uses, 1 space per unit. What's a unit? Is that, if there's 5 bedrooms in one apartment, is that a unit?
Yes, that is right. One of the things I talked about in an earlier meeting is we're moving from homes to units. And it's a dwelling unit, but we'll be using 4-unit residences, or we use, 2-unit. We're not 2-family, because people who live there are not necessarily family. So,
I'm more focused on, you could have a lot of people living in a building that only required 1 parking space. If you define unit as, if all those bedrooms are in 1 unit, then you could have a lot of people that only need 1 parking space. The other thing that, the way this bears on the businesses, particularly the restaurant line, the last line, 2 spaces per 4 seats. That's a lot of off-street parking, because we're talking about off-street here. I tried desperately to find a way not to kill an application for a restaurant zoning permit unsuccessfully in downtown Putney because of that. And particularly a restaurant, what is the need to have it all be off-street? People generally park on the street to go to a restaurant. So I find that particular requirement onerous, frankly, so.
well, they're not all off-street, just to be clear.
Well, when we were looking at it, that's what we were told, is it had to be off-street. In order for us to get the permit for the restaurant, we had to demonstrate that we had that much off-street parking. And with what they had, I finally went back to my client and said, you can have a table and a half.
Yeah, got it.
I think it means dedicated space, and street parking's not dedicated.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll look into that. And it's another, again, great point. If you send that as a question or comment in the way you want it to be stated, I'll make sure that it's reviewed again, as your question on cannabis was by Wyndham Regional Commission.
Good, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Okay. Then I'm just going to go on to the Cumbrian. Oh, sorry.
I have a question. This is as a lister. The forest overlay blocks.
Yeah.
Do you envision that impacting property value? Because I'm not sure what restrictions it comes with, but if you're going to restrict people's property, I would suspect we'd have to, that it would affect the grand list.
You have a great meeting to come to on July 1st, Jordy, where I can't answer that directly because it's not my area of expertise. I actually asked the same question, but I think that's a good question to bring to the July 1st meeting. No, I wouldn't be able to answer that right now, so. But bring it, please.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Chairman, on page 2 of the report, there are several points I would like to raise. So I'll do them in order from the top. Number 2, steep slopes. We have a spectacular geography here in Putney. We all know that, for example, behind the cemetery on Route 5, it's almost vertical when it drops there. Now, we have a place in Putney where there actually is an attempt to build a house down a slope like that. Now, because I looked at the permit, I know that it has an 18% grade, and we allow, the steepest we allow is a 20% grade. Now, just to give you an idea of what that entails, you're probably all familiar with Route 9 between Searsburg and Woodford Hollow, where they have the truck escape ramps. Those grades are all 8%. And in fact, the steepest public road in Vermont is also the steepest in the United States. It's in Lincoln Gap, and it's 24%. If you've ever been up there, that's pretty impressive. One tests the brakes before trying that. So I would suggest that we might look at a conservative definition of steep slopes, not what is theoretically possible, because the question is, how much is it going to cost for a practicable driveway in terms of everything that has to go down there, from emergency vehicles to deliveries to the residence vehicles in all kinds of weather. Coming to number 9, My understanding of, in residential uses, my understanding of unit is as it is where I live at Putney Landing. We have 18 units. There are 12 townhouses and there are 6 apartments. Now, of course, more people live in the townhouses than in the apartments, but that's my understanding, and I think it may be a general understanding of unit. All assembly uses, 1 space per 4 installed seats. That presumes basically that 4 people arrive in each car, and I'm thinking that sounds unlikely. A few will, and there will be some pedestrians, but I'm thinking that is a little on the optimistic side. Medical office uses, it's defined in terms of square feet of gross floor area. I'm wondering why it isn't defined in terms, because the people in there see patients, why it isn't defined in terms of the number of healthcare providers who are in there, plus, as is done with one of the others, 1 space for each employee, so providers and clerks and you name it. I think that one may be a little hard to actually realize. But then, of course, there's other office uses, and 1 space per 500 square feet of gross floor area, but similarly to medical office uses, some offices are professional offices that see clients. Other offices don't see anyone except very occasionally. I don't know, take for example Yellow Barn's office. It's simply there, and the people who work there need parking spaces, but once again, I'm wondering whether we can be more precise. And I second what Selectman Proctor said regarding restaurants and taverns, because we have an example right next door here, Putney Diner. It's shared parking for the tavern. So it's not just Putney Diner, it's everybody else, every other business and whatever tenants there are in there. I don't know who's upstairs and who's in the so-called carriage house. Okay, finally, number 11, I can perhaps offer a couple of clarifications there. 4 months for camping sounds like really long camping. I don't know of a place like this in Putney, but Horseshoe Acres in Andover on the Andover-Weston Road, people bring their lodgings, their portable lodgings there, and they park them there all summer. They go home in the car and come back every weekend and holidays and so on. I think that may be what's being addressed there. 6 months of residential occupancy, I've seen that happen many times when a house burned, and so the people, while the house is being rebuilt, live on the property in an RV, and because it's a place to live. You own the land. So just offering those comments for,
Yes.
as always, they're worth what you paid for them.
Thank you. And I appreciate that, and I'll review this video for them, but it is really helpful if you want to put them in writing to us. I will make sure that when the Regional Commission, our consultants review it.
Okay.
That would be, I think we're trying to make sure we respond to all the input, and that makes it easy for us.
Shall do.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Other comments on the zoning?
Thank you.
Okay, sure. All right, so that's just one project, our big one. We're planning now to undertake the comprehensive village plan. The grant for that was just signed recently. And I'm very happy to say that our new planning commissioner, Vanessa Long, is going to be the project lead. I'll be the project director, which she'll really dig into this with me. It's been very helpful to have Pitt, for example, lead the zoning because he's so knowledgeable about it. And I've been managing the process. So that's great. And we've met and developed a high-level schedule for undertaking this. And I think, importantly, we want to make sure that we're giving zoning and other projects their due. We can only do so much at a time. So what's going to be happening in the near term is doing project research, detailed planning, understand some best practices, understand the issues, the resources that can help us. I will say that I just went to a Wyndham Regional Commission training on Act 181, and I realized now that they're going to be doing a land use plan for Putney. as part of Act 181, and that'll be coming to us this fall. So it'd be very helpful to have what they have done before we dig into anything else, because we always want to build that on that information. For example, there's a number of other things. So we'll be researching what are the things to include, best practices, and then put together a proposal to talk to the Planning Commission in August about building in a project advisory committee, and to do the nomination process like we did for zoning and for the housing needs assessment. So self-nominations or nominate somebody else and give that a couple of months. And then have our first meeting with that committee probably in November to approve an RFP for a consultant. So by then we'll have the criteria and the best practices, and we'll meet with the advisory committee to say this is our approach, this is how we plan to go, do you have feedback before we issue the RFP. Then the idea would be we would then do that selection process and engage that consultant to assist us in January and have our kickoff the February Planning Commission meeting, at which time we've handed to you the zoning regulations. And so we're still supporting you on that, but we'll feel like we've done our heavy lift and we can begin to take on another project. And we expect that that project, could be 5-6 month project. It won't be as long as these other ones. It'll be fairly quick to really engage the public in doing visioning about how to what we want in the village, where we might expand the village center to, and the neighborhood development area, the whole scope. But it doesn't need to go on like the zoning is for an 18-month project. It's not like that. It's a shorter project. It's about the time that we did the housing needs assessment in. We would be done in June and bring the results to you with whatever recommendations and requests in that. So that's our plan, and we'll just be doing this background work and learning in the near term. Any questions, comments on the comprehensive village plan? Then I just wanted to mention what we're doing about the housing needs assessment and action plan. Of course, one of those things is moving forward the comprehensive village plan, which was recommended there as it was in the town plan. On Putney Housing Collaboration, we had that meeting with VCRD facilitated housing collaboration discussion that some of you were at. We also identified there ourselves what are some priorities for working together. I think they kind of largely land in, just to be really short, identifying shared goals and move in the same direction, clarifying, defining roles and responsibilities, regular connection check-ins, continue building trust, collaboration, and navigating conflict. Be able to move things forward. So there's a question of how that will come together. It's not particularly on the Planning Commission to necessarily do that. And I just want to step back for a minute and just say, as I think on our housing journey, I want to do actually an appreciation to the Select Board. The Select Board has really been doing quite a few things over the time I've been engaged, and before that on housing. I would say when the town plan was done, and the town plan certainly was a step forward on housing and made recommendations of what to do. Then shortly, right as we were doing that, the chair of the Housing Advisory Committee, which was then the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee, came to you all and said, we need a new name and a new charge. And Alina, thank you for taking the lead on creating a new charter, which the Select Board adopted in that following February of 24. And that referenced, working with the Planning Commission and in the housing needs assessment and other projects. And so they were at the table as part of that, as were other entities in the town. So I congratulate you on that. And then we finished the project, and you have as a last page of my report here, the last page of the Planning Commission's Strategies Action Plan, which is part of what was in the resolution that you affirmed to adopt the strategy to guide housing projects in town. And there, as part of how the grant was written, we needed to identify who would do what to move things forward. So we used the framework of the town plan. So we just modeled that. And it has in here ways forward on what to do. And it's what we could see at the time of February. And since then, we've had further collaborations and discussions. But it remains to be seen how things will move forward and who will do what. It's clear the Planning Commission is doing certain things like the Comprehensive Village Plan. But I'm finding myself in discussion with others that might provide funding, for example, to do things like the housing coordination services. But I feel that it's actually really time for the select board to sort of say, well, how do you want this to go forward? Because it's not, the Planning Commission put forward a plan suggesting ways it happen, but I think the select board has done great leadership to date on this, and I think you'll be hearing from Mike Murwicki, the chair of the committee, at your next meeting told me he was going to be on the agenda to talk about what does the advisory committee do, given all of this. So I just wanted to say a lot of elements are on the table, really a lot of pieces. And I think what we need now is leadership to clarify how this is going to move forward. I too would like to know that because I'm afraid I'm going to try to do too much, which is a fault of mine. And I really don't want to get ahead of everybody too much. But we are at an inflection point. I do know there's funders that we could approach on some of these things. I don't mind advising anybody else working on that. But I think it's premature to do any of that until it's clear from the select board who you want to have lead these different things. So as you consider this, you'll be talking with the advisory committee chair, I think later this month, how do you want to proceed? I don't expect you to answer that right now, but that's a question I have. My hands are full. I've got lots to do. The Planning Commission does, but we're equally committed to trying to move these things forward. So I just wanted to sort of provide that perspective of both appreciation for all that you have done already and the need for leadership now to make sure that we can move things forward. And happy to answer any questions you may have as you think about that. And then the very last thing, just a list of our upcoming meetings, so you have them at your fingertips. And,
Thank you.
So one of the things that caught my eye here is the renew and expand existing housing. Renew number 2 is establish a housing improvement fund. And Karen, you and I had a conversation about revolving loan funds.
Yes.
Not just for housing, but also for economic development. And so I'm wondering if we could fold that. You said that we actually have one established.
We had one.
Okay. So do we have to we'd have to do a town meeting again?
Yeah, I need to research how to reestablish. I've looked at other towns that do have policies and procedures.
Brattleboro, yeah.
Yeah, there's other towns I've looked at.
Okay.
But I need to just have the time to compile it, but yeah.
Other than the time spent to vet people for loans, I don't see the downside to that.
I don't either.
It's circular money, it's money that comes into the community and then goes out, and it's helpful for businesses and housing developments alike, and I don't see why we wouldn't want to go down that road.
Right. Like I said, we need to research it internally.
And if we pass the sales lot, then we could fund it with that.
Right. And
Just
the solar.
just a
right.
pitch.
And the solar.
And the solar, right, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Yes.
if I may just say that it was sort of the gist of the Housing Improvement Fund was a revolving loan fund.
Yeah, I was wondering if it's
Yes.
related to housing, if we could have it as like some, larger economic development housing.
Just like the comprehensive village plan
Yeah.
will also be about economic development, not just housing. It's a little hard in the constraints of a grant to go too far down that
Right.
road, but
Like all of those things.
fully supported.
Need money, they all need seed money.
And
They're
I
all
will,
important.
if I may, I'll note that the Housing Solutions Task Force, and I know Fletcher, that you plan to talk about that in a minute, is going down the road of trying to research this type of fund, just to serve a slice, just a narrow slice of the need. So those efforts need to be coordinated. Anyway.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
In regard to the last point, I was the chair of the Community Improvement Committee in Westminster, which is a revolving loan fund for people. The guidelines being that people didn't qualify for conventional financing, and that the purpose of the loan was, heating or health related. I would say it was a lot of work, both vetting the projects and the people and keeping, we took out mortgages on the properties that we loaned money on. And, they were often high maintenance loans. And that fell to, at the time, the treasurer to bird dog that. But there's a certain amount of effort involved in maintaining a fund like that.
Yes, I think that's part of the research to be done, and with that, to try to consider what is the best way for these loans to be managed. There are organizations who do that,
Right.
and is it better to have an organization handle that separate from the town, on behalf of the town, but not to have the town do that vetting, and it's having a hard enough keeping up with zoning administration, let alone loans. But so trying to not have recommendations that can't be implemented because there's no capability to do it. We need capacity to do it. So that was one of the ideas, is to have another entity manage the fund to make the loans. But it still needs governance. It's still, as you know, you have to oversee it and make sure that it's achieving its purpose and deal with the issues that come up along the way. So that's one I think a lot of people are interested in. Okay. Anything else?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Regarding on page 3, the Putney Housing Collaboration, I attended a few months ago at Putney Fire Station, a Putney Housing Solution Task Force discussion, I guess I should say, where there was a developer who visited us from Bella Stalls. He said, and he had numbers to prove it, developing one-bedroom apartments is much more profitable than developing two-bedroom apartments. Okay. Towns throughout Vermont are being forced to close their primary schools, and it could happen to us. So, what young family will choose to make their home in a town that has no primary school? Meanwhile, the older folks, like me, will be disappearing from the scene, because that's the way it is. So I would suggest that the Putney Housing Solution Task Force may actually be a bit short-sighted at this point, because what they may wish to focus on is family housing. Now at the meeting, I was told, oh, no problem. The seniors who have the houses out in the country will move into the one-bedroom apartments in town. But here's the catch. You're a young family. You want a town that has a school. You don't have money yet to pay a down payment on a house. I was there at one time, and I'm sure that plenty of you are or will be. We need to have some sort of priority on family housing in Putney Village, because there are people who want to live in village. I should have said rental family housing. Now there is some. I live in one of those places. I can't count all the kids there because they move around too fast, but there sure are a lot of them. And they range from learning to walk to one who I guess is going to be a junior in high school next year. That is what we need to keep our population up, which in turn will keep our school up. A few years ago, I believe it was the year just before COVID happened, before the consolidation, our principal said to us, Putney Central School's enrollment is increasing, and the reason is the kids at Putney Landing. Now, of course, there's also the Laura Plant's house, You may know, I walk around Putney Village all the time. I don't see any kids playing anywhere else. Our future as a town hinges on young families coming here to live, because the rest of us will be passing away, and if we don't have a school here, most of them, as we would do, will choose a town that has an operating school. So I'm offering that. I'll give you that in writing as well. I think thinking is a bit short-sighted if it is, okay, we'll move all the seniors into town, and then all the young families can buy the houses out in the country. Do they have a down payment? And some of them simply don't want to live in the country. They would rather live in the village. That's all I need to say about that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to respond to that because I agree with you. I do think that's short-sighted. It's a very lovely idea that young families can afford housing, to own homes these days, but the fact is that they can't. And having been a family with young children, it gets really old living in the country with young children very fast, especially if your kids have to go on the bus for 45 to an hour and a half just to get to school. So I totally agree with that, with your premise that what we need in the village is a mix of senior housing, 1-bedroom apartments, 2-bedroom apartments, family housing, and if we can get to the point where people can also afford their own home, that would be lovely. But right now, that's not the case. So I totally agree.
Any other select board comments? All right, Housing Advisory Committee, Chief Fletcher.
I just wanted to express some concerns about how the Housing Advisory Committee seems to be functioning. I agree with Sue's comments that the new resolution, the updated resolution, is great on paper, but I don't see the committee doing much to move forward the more substantive aspects of it. It seems to be functioning more as a study group for the people on the committee. Not to disparage that, but there's no follow through of any action as a result of it. And the committee itself, how it's functioning, the May meeting was not legally warned. When the meeting opened, there was not a quorum present. That fact was never noted. It was, in terms of the open meeting law, it was a completely dysfunctional meeting. It proceeded nonetheless, and with a very interesting presentation by a fellow who's working with a group that tries to connect people with extra space in their house with people who need a place to live, which is a perfectly good service, but seems to me to be about a light year away from what we were just talking about and the substantive issues of creating housing in Putney. So I'd really like to see that committee, take up the directives, the suggestions that are included in this resolution, and actually start looking at it as a checklist of how are we going to move these things forward. And I'm hoping that when the chair of that committee comes to I think our next meeting, is it?
June 25th, he's on the agenda
June
already.
25. Well, I'm hoping he might have some ideas how we can make this work. Because right now, the suggestion that was made before that the task force is doing a lot more of the heavy lifting on any of these issues than we are, and I'd have to agree. It really begs the question. I know I volunteered to get on the committee, but it really begs the question of why does the committee exist? It's just a study group. I don't know why it needs to be a town committee.
And I don't remember reading. I don't remember exactly all.
It's a great.
Can you give me a
It's a great resolution.
So the purpose I can't put this thing at all. One of the things was to fold in energy, and when I envisioned that, I was thinking, I know some other energy committees have done workshops in the past where they build screens, or not screens, storm windows, for folks. So they have a whole, the committee members build the screens at the storms and give them out to people. They're very simple construction, they're just wood with plastic, they're very easy to make, but you have to, if you have old windows, they, some of them go like this. So that was one thing that I was envisioning that the committee could do is put on a workshop for actual energy efficiency. And the other thing that I was envisioning was that it could be a pass-through for grant funding that the town could receive, but the housing task force could not. So those are two reasons that I can see for a town committee to exist. Basically to further the town plan's energy goals and for grant funding. And I have to agree with you. I don't think the committee's really been functioning that well.
Yeah.
Maybe it needs new blood.
Yeah, I wish I represented that new blood, but I'm a drop in the bucket
Well,
right now.
Yeah, you're the newer blood, right? So one drop makes a gallon eventually.
Well, I think, and right now the committee's stated preference, and they seem to be pretty strong on it, is to meet only quarterly.
Yeah.
The resolution is at least quarterly, I think. But I think, we ought to hear from each of our committees on at least a quarterly basis. But that doesn't mean they ought to be only meeting quarterly.
Right.
Anyway, that's just my sentiments on it. I really think that this is one of the higher priority issues we have to address, and we really got to find a way to put some muscle behind it.
So,
I'll just chime in here as you're thinking about that. I would like direction on this table that I gave you of the projects about what you'd like to see. I don't mean right now, but as you think about it, as I said, I've been sort of looking around to say what are the ways forward, particularly for things that would help us improve our existing housing, make it more affordable, healthy, efficient, and hopefully maybe additional units that make it also more affordable to own. But it's not clear to me where we should lean, right, on things. And I'm happy to have, not this moment, a further conversation with you about that. But I'm feeling like I should really hear from you. You have a proposal here, right? But you may see things differently, and that's fine. So as you're thinking about it overall as a piece, like how does the town realize this? And I think it goes back to the VCRD conversation as well. How do we leverage resources, thinking, capability across the town in collaboration? There needs to be a common understanding of what we're doing so the pieces can complement each other. And maybe not duplicate each other. So anyway, it is important to think about the advisory committee, but I think to think of this, I'd encourage you to think about it as a whole, as a strategic plan. How does it move forward? And I do think resources can give the town more capacity to do these things. I don't think everything is going to be volunteer effort. I think volunteer effort can make sure capacities are funded and exist versus trying to be that capacity, if that makes sense.
A question that I don't necessarily want an on-the-fly answer, but something to think about are the things that are on the planning commission's plate right now that might well be offloaded to a housing advisory committee. Well, particularly as Eileen pointed out, in the grants area, are there things that this committee could, in fact, support the planning commission's work by taking over some of the I don't know, grants, something, but I'd ask you give that some thought. And maybe the meeting when the chair of the housing committee is here, maybe some suggestions would be appropriate at that
Okay.
point.
I have given that thought, but I haven't understood where to share those thoughts and when.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, consider that an invitation.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Mr. Fairman?
Mr. Chairman, Housing Advisory Committee. Advisory committees are advising you, our town of Putney Select Board, our legislative body. And sometimes it is said that advisory committees are giving a charge. Has the Housing Advisory Committee been given a charge?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it's available on the town's website under resolutions.
Yes. Now, the reason I'm asking that question rhetorically is, if in fact they have a charge, are we not talking about, for some reason, they are not fulfilling their charge? And that perhaps something could be done there? Because I never gainsay volunteers coming forward to do something, because without them, Vermont simply would not work. So I have the utmost respect for these folks, but it may be a matter of there being some adjustment to either the charge or to how the charge is being executed. Just a suggestion.
Oh, I agree.
That cover it for that?
That's all I got.
Okay. Moving on to Selectboard New Business, Local Emergency Management Plan, annual review.
So in your packet is the local emergency management plan municipal adoption form. This is annually. We update because of name changes to protect the innocent. And also, there's a short form of the local emergency management plan, which basically it's a standard form to submit to the state. And we have had some changes, in our department and with the emergency management director. So updating this annually is a good thing. Now, this local emergency management plan, we do have a comprehensive plan that is not in this packet, Fletcher, but it's a work in progress, and I will be finalizing that with Len Howard III, our emergency management director, and also inquiring with the emergency services department. And I have also reached out to some of our nonprofit agencies to have input as well. So this local emergency management plan, for those folks who don't know, ERAF, which is Emergency Relief Assistance Funding from the state of Vermont, when we have this renewed annually, and because we have certain overlays in our zoning regulations, like river corridors, it increases the amount of funding that Putney is allocated if there's a weather event. So we are at 17.5%, because we have the river corridor, and that's a big number. Because a lot of towns don't have that amount of percentage.
Well,
So anyone without zoning, they don't get 17.5%, they may get 12.5%, and it even goes lower. What are you gonna, you're thinking something.
I just, that's a good reason to have zoning. So,
Yeah.
one good reason to have zoning. No, I just, I'm very happy to see that my name is no longer on the emergency management director piece. I was wondering why you selected me as an alternate though. I don't necessarily mind, but
what page are you on?
contact information, the last page. Municipal government
School.
contacts.
Page 2, 3,
9.
thank you, Bex. No.
I don't necessarily mind, I'm just not sure I'd be really that available in the event of an emergency.
Well, here's the thing,
Considering that I'd probably have to, if there was a statewide
Right,
emergency,
yeah.
I'd be in Londonderry, so
Right.
I don't know that it would be really smart for me to be on this list.
well, I can take you off if you want. Most of the time, you know,
I guess I'm asking if one of you two would like to take that off,
I can
if
do it.
you're local.
I'm great in emergency.
and it doesn't have to be, you know, I mean, it can be any title. It doesn't have to be the entire select board. It can be,
Well, it's not the entire select board here, I don't think, it's just 3 of us. It's probably left over from when it was a 3-person board. Anyway, if you
all right, so if you,
Bex
I
could do it
can
instead.
take you off.
Okay,
No problem. And this most likely will grow,
yeah,
so,
okay.
you know, in the bigger scheme of things, in the bigger plan, we will be adding names because, you know, we have a major disaster.
I mean, it makes
Yeah.
sense that all the select board members would be on some kind of contact tree.
Right.
Just
Okay,
eager to not be the
yeah, I will take your name off.
person that gets the EMD emails. So, we just have to adopt it, right?
You have to adopt it, authorize me to sign it, and then,
Great.
and Eric is select board chair.
So I move that we adopt the local emergency management plan and authorize the town manager and select board chair to sign it.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
You all set that here?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Listers and assessors office discussion, Jordy, that's you.
I don't know if you guys got a chance to read this, I can give you the short version. So I don't know, you read it, you've read it?
I don't agree with it, 'cause you guys can't leave.
Because what?
You guys can't leave.
No,
I know, I felt for you.
at some point,
I really feel for you.
at some point I'm gonna age out.
We all are.
Yeah, so it seems so simple, just create the grand list and you do these assessment and evaluation and the data and the current use, and the homestead declarations and the property transfers. But there's all these moving intertwined parts, and I'm doing right now, the site visits and data collection. Doug and I do the valuation together. I do the data entry, the current use, the homesteads, and the allocations and the property transfers. So I just got elected for 3 more years. So I've got 2.5 in theory left. And I'll be in my 70s. Will I step down? Quite likely. So time to start thinking. Doug and I have been talking about it for over a year. What happens when I'm done? And really, the carry on like we are, not probably a good idea. Just hope that we can find more. We've been trying. Our third lister, Kurt, younger, has a family, has a full-time job. The last time we tried to get him here for a meeting, his he had gotten a new job, his boss wouldn't let him out. So that's tough. We've been trying for a very long time to find somebody to step in. We were looking for somebody to be like Eileen was a few years back, who could do everything. And now we're just looking for somebody to show up once in a while, not having any luck. So options 2 and 3 are basically the same. One of them has a lister board, elected lister board, and one of them doesn't. And there's various options of configurations of who does the assessment work and who does the property transfers work. That's sort of the office work and the assessment work. Some of the towns I've talked to, the person who does the assessments out in the field also they do the data entry. The office person answers the phone and talks people off the cliff, and they do the property transfers and the homestead declarations. Usually the assessor would do the current use because that can get fairly convoluted and complex. And I sort of, in here, Doug and I talked about it and we laid out, this is what we think would be best would be to go to town meeting next year and say, let's do away with the lister board. Who knows how that'll be received. If people say, no, we can't do that, say, hey, step up, time to do it. Our sense is that we should have the assessor who does the data collection and the site visits and stuff, the valuation piece. He's a different person than the one who does the property transfers and the office work, because it's too much in one person's hands, one point of view, nobody to bounce things off of, nobody to call and question. And Doug and I spend a lot of time talking about when we have valuation questions. Some are really straightforward, but sometimes it's a lot of thinking, and if it's really good to have somebody to work with, to be a balance in that. So our recommendation is to do away with the lister board and have an assessor, a professional assessor, and what some towns call a lister assistant, and do the office piece. And I'm sure there's other configurations. I put out, Newfane has a model that I think works well, and that's what they have. And I tried to get a sense of what their cost for the assessor was. Their lister assistant said he does a lot of work in March for a couple of weeks and not a whole lot the rest of the time. And she's in the office 9 hours a week, and a year ago she was getting $23 an hour. I don't know what. And the assessor is part of a larger company, and there's a contract with the company for him to take care of all that stuff, and she didn't know what it was. And I asked Bill Krajewski at the company a week and a half ago if he could sort of tell me what Newfane's contract was, but I haven't heard back.
So they contract with
With
NIMIC.
NIMIC.
Yeah.
And Bill Krajewski, who's the boss at NIMIC, said, yeah, if maybe Katie, who's at the office person at Newfane, would come over to Putney and work there too, so they clearly like her and like that relationship. But that's where we are. It's possible that if we did away with the lister board at March of 26 meeting, I could be the office person for a year or so, but I would want the assessor in place. It might be easier, I don't know which is easier to find.
Which is easier to find.
An assessor or a office person who knows Patriot. Yeah.
Assessors are very hard to find.
Yeah, and Ryan from NIMIC is supposed to call me, but I think, and maybe now that grand lists are, abstract has been filed, maybe I'll hear from him, maybe I'll reach out to him again. You want to add anything, Douglas?
No, you did.
You got good questions? And this is something that is in your, we don't have any control over it, but we would ask that you start to think about it. If the aliens snatched me tomorrow, we would be in big trouble. So.
How many hours are you putting in now?
This week, very few because we filed the abstract, but it's been, I'm 625 hours last, I just did some math the other day, I can't remember what it was. I think we're allotted, I did 625 hours last year. And that was the reappraisal year, so that was high. I'm probably in for 12 hours a week or so. If I wasn't doing the assessment piece, it would be, and Katie in Newfane works 9 hours. Karen, do you know how many parcels in Newfane?
The new thing,
Yeah.
less than
Less
here.
than 5. Yeah,
Yes.
we have 1,100 parcels if you count the town.
Yeah.
So she's doing homesteads and property transfers.
Yeah, and I didn't get the full detail
Okay.
of what she's doing, but she is using Patriot to some extent, because she was able to show me stuff that I had questions on, so.
Yeah, so the homesteads happen from January something to about October-ish. They kind of come in like big chunks around April
Yeah.
15th. And then they kind of trickle in until October 15th, which is the extension date. And then property transfers happen year round, and it just depends on when people sell their houses or decide to put it into a trust or whatever. Then there's current use. Does she do current use?
Talking to Bill Podesta, it didn't sound like she did, because it sounded like he would expect they did.
Take that over anyway.
Yeah, and some of it is complex, and if you weren't doing the assessment piece, I'm not sure you'd want to do that.
I don't think we have enough work here for a full-time assessor.
No, it wouldn't be
So
a full-time assessor, it would be,
So it'd be some kind of town shared
It could be a
thing.
shared model.
Yeah.
yeah. Well, and if we did with, like Ryan from NIMIC,
Yeah.
it's a contract with them, and then if he breaks a leg, they have somebody
Right.
who would fill in for him. And my recommendation would be to go with a company because they have a deeper pool and a broader depth of knowledge.
At least at first, and when, if we find somebody more local who's willing to,
Yeah,
and other towns who are willing to, go in on an assessor with us. It is hard to find people that find that type of work fascinating.
there's a lot of it right now.
Yeah, there is.
How much of what you do could be done remotely? Like if there were a shared model, could it be somebody who is here maybe a full day, but is filling up the rest of the time you spend working remotely?
2 of the software programs I use are remote, could be remote. I can log in from home. One of them is housed on our server. And actually, if I had a PC Karen can log in from home and JJ can log in from home. So if I had the the right computer at home, I could log in and do everything remotely. You know, not everything, but a good deal of it remotely.
Land records, data entry, and homestead declarations and current use could all be done remotely.
I couldn't have office hours, but I could have phone calls probably forwarded to a cell phone or something. So
My understanding is that Doreen Woodward's still doing the indexing for the Westminster land records. She moved to Florida years ago.
yeah, so but the land records indexing stuff comes from I do the property transfers, but that's all in AP5, which is fully online. We don't have any of it in the building. And VTPI, which is our other major piece of software, is a website hosted, owned by the state. I mean, do they own it?
VTPI?
No, VTPI.
VTPI? I don't know if they, yeah.
They pay for it. We don't pay for that one. We pay for the assessment software, but not the grant software.
Which is also almost 85.
Yeah. We're in year 6 of the 3-year transfer from the old grid list software to the new grid list software.
I was just wondering if we emphasize the potential for working remotely, if we can expand our pool of
Yeah.
possible
You
applicants.
could definitely expand the pool of listers. I'll call it a lister assistant. And actually it'd be an assessor assistant because listers are elected, it turns out. Otherwise, you're an assessor. And the assessor would have to be local because they have to visit properties. But they don't actually have to come into our building, hardly ever, probably.
And when it comes right down to it, a lot of that can be done remotely too, by using satellite imagery and
Yeah.
stuff. There's been a push to move away from insight in person.
And what I'm unclear on is how, I have people come in and say, this information is wrong, and what the chain of command with that, how that would work, but that's the piece between the assistant and the assessor. How do we want to work that? Do you collect the information and the assistant to collect the information and give it to the assessor? Or,
Yeah.
but that's,
Make them all go to grievance.
yeah, make them all go to grievance?
Yeah.
No thanks.
Yeah, it's, a lot of towns are grappling with this. And it is a very complex, job that really doesn't lend itself to being elected anymore.
No,
Um,
it's much more complicated now than it was 9.5 years ago when I got elected.
yeah.
And every time we get a new lister newsletter is a little more complicated than it was the one before.
Yeah. I don't know where the state landed on consolidation, but I mean, to begin the year, they'd actually eliminated the lister's office altogether and made it a countywide district.
Yeah.
They've since backed off on that, but I think the writing's on the wall that something like that's gonna happen, because it's too haphazard. It's different.
It's
Each
no
town is
longer
different.
a
It's
citizen
yeah,
level task.
yeah.
It's a, Cy did say that he was pretty sure they tabled that bill, which is where bills go to die.
Yes.
So, for a while anyway.
That's a whole other long conversation, but yeah, I agree that we probably should put it on the warrant for next year to eliminate the listers. And
So how much work do you want us to do, if any? Like, do you want us looking at other towns? Do you want us getting prices?
for
Like,
different models.
yeah.
probably start doing that, yeah. The simplest is probably just to contract with Nimic, at least at first.
Yeah.
And then, and like I said, if we can find somebody, huh?
If they were, Ryan was gonna, he runs the south.
He runs the staff.
He runs the south for them, and, you know, can he take on another
Yeah.
town?
I mean, there's other companies that
Yeah.
would probably take.
And we do need one that does Patriot.
Yeah.
Even though we have a NIMRIC person who just bought property in town, Jacob Stoddard.
Totally.
Yeah. But I asked him if he wanted to learn AP5. He said no. So that it does narrow the pool a little bit.
Right,
Yeah. Has to be done.
right, so. Jody and I have been talking about it, and kind of,
We'll keep talking about it.
yeah,
Figure out what we need to know, what you guys want to know more
What the
Well,
specifically.
Jordy's willing to stay for a year, you know, to be the lister's assistant, and then I could, you know,
Right.
farm out the assessor piece.
yeah,
That would, you know, that's a good intro
yeah.
too. Anyway, I don't know that we need to have that conversation here, that seems like enough.
Mr. Mayor, you have a question?
Yes, but I didn't want to interrupt you.
I'm done.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, listening to this discussion, I agree that contracting with a firm means that they employ ample staff, so someone will always be available. And of course, they bring regional and perhaps statewide knowledge that someone who lives in Putney may not have. But they do not bring local knowledge. And if this came up at town meeting next year, I would raise the question, so I'm raising it now, of whether there's the possibility of a hybrid model where we contract with a firm to do the heavy lifting that is too much for elected listers, but that we retain the elected listers for their local knowledge and as the final authority on what effectively our consultants have offered. Now, full disclosure here, in my corporate career, I often worked with consultants, and we always said, experts on tap, not on top. Supposedly Winston Churchill originally said this, but there are so many things he originally said. But there could be an advantage to keeping a local voice, but assisting them so that it becomes practicable for someone to do as an elected lister because of the local knowledge, not only of the terrain, but also of the people, the owners and everyone else. So I'm just putting that out there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you both for starting this conversation. Alright, Selectboard Old Business, Old Route 5 traffic calming and request to reduce speed limit.
Okay, so I said I'd take a stab at adding the Alice Hallway and Carol Broadway to specifically the, where is that? Page which?
2.
Thank you. To the 25 miles per hour, speed limit section. Did you get the town highway numbers?
No, I did
Okay.
not.
Cause that piece, I didn't know. I
Yeah.
probably,
I have them.
probably could have looked it up
Yeah,
somewhere,
no,
but
I have
was-
them on the map, so I can add them.
And the other thing that I did was, cause I couldn't help myself, I changed the Board of Selectmen to the Select Board. And then the last thing that I did was add a section to the throughways, in Article 6, to justify the stop signs that are there now. So essentially calling Old Route 5 a throughway so that we shall erect and maintain suitable signs at those intersections. And full disclosure, this traffic ordinance needs some revamping in the future, but, this was just the quick and dirty, let's get that speed limit down to 25 miles an hour.
I'd like to put in a plug for 20. And I've been driving these roads and, I can't think of a reason on earth why you would go around Christian Square at 25 miles an hour. In fact, and
Because
Old
you can.
Depot, it certainly feels to me like it's too fast to speed when I'm in my car. I find I normally.
You wanna move all of them down to 20? That
Well,
would be the
I had
easiest.
this discussion with the town manager last week, and she very much wanted them to be consistent, whatever it was, that it be consistent. And I can see the virtue of that. I mean, the one that I find the least compelling, ironically, is Old Route 5, because it feels more like a bigger road.
It does, yeah.
On the other hand, we had, Kathy Bartlett in here not that long ago making a very impassioned plea for lowering the speed limit on
Yeah.
that road.
The people walk on that section,
I
and
know.
I've seen people with their kids and their dog, and they're trying to be safe, and people are I mean, the people who were going straight through would speed the whole way. The stop signs probably help, at least coming from Johnson's Curve to the stop sign probably slows them down, gives them a breath, start back up again. But I don't have a problem with changing all of these to 20.
I live on Sandhill and it is horrifying.
Yeah,
It is
Sandhill is-
absolutely horrifying how fast people drive down there, and I have kids and a dog, and
Yeah.
I am so afraid.
Yeah, that's another
cars.
place where people are definitely walking along the road, looking at birds, looking at all sorts of
Oh yeah,
things.
there's a lot of foot traffic and horses.
Yeah,
I mean,
And
there's-
particularly on a dirt road. It's, I
yeah,
had one of my professors in college, of course I went to Marlboro College, so we were out on dirt roads all the time, and he said, you're driving down a dirt road, you should effectively consider that you are driving on ball bearings.
yeah.
yeah.
I mean, every time the highway department works on Sandhill, I'm grateful for their hard work, but I'm like, now people can just go
Because of
faster because those
Couldn't you put in a
potholes.
little washboard while you're
Yeah.
Just
I mean,
leave it like that.
It's so, they do a beautiful job, but then
Yeah.
people just rip through there.
They do. Yeah, I'm fine with that. I can change that. And is everybody good with the other changes? Just find the town highway
How do we,
numbers.
I mean,
we just put new signs, how do we, is that all it takes?
those are the two big considerations.
Yeah,
Those
yeah,
signs
signs.
ain't cheap,
Right.
and we'd have to repost pretty much everything. And
I think it's.
what are we gonna do to get enforcement of this? Are we gonna tell Sheriff Anderson we want a cop on these roads issuing tickets?
There might be some grant money, not for that, but for
something.
radar signs, the ones that
Right.
flash. And not that those, they don't help all the time, but they flash at you. So,
But maybe
people,
people could be there, I mean, sometimes there are sheriffs posted out on Sandhill,
yeah,
which,
maybe especially once we change it for the first couple of months, have them a big presence on those roads. I mean, people are gonna speed on these roads anyway, that's just a fact, but,
well, what else can we do?
yeah, well, we can institute traffic calming, so
Right.
put a stop sign on Sandhill every 2 seconds.
More
Um,
potholes.
I mean, this is a start, I think it's worth it to repost them all. Cause you're right, these are roads that don't, 25 miles an hour seems pretty slow, but you can't go 25 miles an hour.
Yeah, where are you going?
Yeah.
There are beavers out there, slow down.
Turtles.
Turtles.
Yeah.
Right, so.
Okay, so I'll fix those up, I'll, find the highway numbers.
I'll get you highway numbers.
And everybody's good at changing it from selectmen to select board?
I love
I
that.
hope so, okay. I'll bring it back to the next meeting and hopefully we can adopt it.
I'll format it and,
Oh, yeah. It's an older. Yeah, if you don't mind formatting it first, and then I can just change the other things.
Trying to stay consistent, but
Yeah,
it's been difficult.
well, this is written a little bit oddly, because it's,
Right.
starts out as sort of a resolution and turns into an ordinance. But, like I said, I think it was written in 1975 or something like that, was the
Yes.
first
Yeah.
iteration of this, so.
Well, cars only went 20 miles an hour.
Yeah,
All
so
right, so,
that's that.
Any public comment, Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Chairman, at the most recent meeting, you and I had an exchange where you correctly pointed out that on Route 5 itself, the state has jurisdiction over the speed limits. There is a mandatory national standard put out by the U.S. Federal Highway Administration, and I quote, "Signs indicating speed limits for which posting is required by law shall be located at the points of change from one speed limit to another." The reason I bring this up is that you've done excellent work there, but there's going to be a need as well to coordinate with VTRANS so that they provide the corresponding signs. And the reason for them to do so is it is a mandatory national standard.
You mean like at the intersection of Route 5 and Old Route 5, where there's no indication of.
Here's a couple of examples. I wrote to you folks about this back in September. Coming in on Old Route 5, drivers turning onto Route 5 northbound do not see a posted 30-mile-per-hour speed limit until they are approaching the Putney Diner. Drivers turning onto Route 5 southbound never see a posted 30-mile-per-hour speed limit. To these drivers, the speed limit in Putney Village is what it is on Old Route 5, not 30 miles per hour as seen by other drivers in both lanes. Similarly, entering village limits via Putney Landing Road, drivers see no posted speed limit until they reach Route 5, where drivers merging onto Route 5 northbound see a posted 30-mile-per-hour speed limit, but drivers turning onto Route 5 southbound or crossing Route 5 to Carroll Brown Way see no posted speed limit.
Yeah.
While other drivers in both lanes have seen 30 or 35 miles per hour. In other words, it's a mess. But the state is actually obliged to work with us on this because the Federal Highway Administration says so. I'm not sure how we get that enforced, but I could look into it. There must be a way because, clearly from a driver's perspective, if you're going to change the speed limit, you have to tell us. And in fact, law enforcement will in those situations not enforce the speed limit because it's so easy to plead that in court.
No sign.
What sign? If there isn't one, a deputy sheriff said to me one time, before I run the radar, I go check in both directions that the same speed limit is posted. For A is posted and B it's the same. And if it isn't, I don't run the radar because I don't want to go to court and waste my time.
I probably shouldn't admit this, but I did in fact beat a ticket in Putney on precisely that basis. In my foolish youth, which I have matured out of.
You would never do that.
Thank you for your honesty.
But it was, I never passed a posted speed limit sign and was ticketed.
Well, you're absolutely right, sir. Of course, you may have had the advantage of your professional training. I don't know, but
I was only a year into my professional training at the time, but I decided I would try it out in court.
sure. Thereby finding your vocation.
Yeah, we have contacts. Maybe.
so I just wanted to make a comment to Old Route 5 going south into Dummerston.
Right.
So I think that's a conversation we have to have with Dummerston.
Yeah, I specifically said that it stops at the town line because obviously
Right.
we have no control over Dummerston, but yes, we probably,
Yeah.
I mean, they probably don't care. But
No, and I don't know what the speed limit is in Dummerston coming into Putney.
35.
Is it 35?
so, I mean, that stretch of road sort of supports that. There's not that much traffic on it, but
We got a stop sign there now.
so everybody's slowing down right around our town line, so
Yeah.
going north, going south. until they reach Putney, they're probably not going to, Putney line, they're probably not going that fast, and then in Dummerston, you know, whatever,
Yeah.
Wild West.
Jordan?
Can you change Putney Mountain Road too? When you cross into Putney, as you crest Putney Mountain Road, it says speed limit 35.
On Putney Mountain Road?
Yes. And there's one 40-foot section where you can hit 35 safely, but that's,
Well, here's the thing, folks, I mean, if you're on a dirt road and you're doing 50, then, you know, it's common
Then you
sense.
get what's coming to you.
It's common sense, I mean, I'll be on a dirt road and, I mean, I don't want my car beat up for one, and, you know, and there are other people, you know, you just gotta have common sense, like,
Everyone does.
well, you know, if you're gonna change every single speed limit
Yeah, I
sign and have,
think-
you
I
know,
know.
you can't do it.
Yeah.
It's just not
I think-
realistic.
I think that, like I said, we do need to look at all of the roads in Putney and this ordinance, but this was really just to get
This
this low hanging fruit that people have been asking for quite some time done. So I recommend we just stick with that.
Yeah.
Okay.
That it?
I'm done.
Okay. Regulating the disposal of solid waste ordinance, let's see the picture.
Yeah, and last time we looked at this, I was requesting any feedback anybody might have. I did make a few changes per Mr. Thurman's suggestion, referring to the Wyndham Solid Waste Management District or other authorized solid waste facility. I changed that problematic paragraph
That's only by the way.
that nobody could make head or tail of to, it shall be unlawful to deposit solid waste of any kind in a municipally owned or maintained disposal container other than waste originating from a public facility or a person using a public facility. So you can use the trash can at the school, but you can't bring your household garbage there.
Okay.
Aside from that, those tweaks were the most, were really the only changes from what we had before us the last time. And I did add one other thing, which is in literally the last line of the ordinance under prosecution. I had neglected to specify whether it was a civil or criminal ordinance, which is in fact statutorily required that you specify in the ordinance. And I said it's a civil ordinance.
Are we allowed to do criminal ordinances?
Well, I don't want somebody getting a criminal record because they had a beer at a ball game. Because if it were a criminal, it would come in as a misdemeanor. It would appear on their record as a misdemeanor. If it's a civil ordinance, they get a fine, and we can chase them for the fine.
Yeah, traffic. Okay.
They don't get a record.
I guess traffic takes you get a record short, but okay. I do have, so on violations, the first one, I mean, the general store does have, a trash can, and the Putney Co-op has a trash can, and are we allowed to use those, I guess is the question. I mean, are you talking about like throwing out my coffee cup versus my, entire household trash?
That's the difference. If they say you can throw your coffee cup in their garbage can, you can throw your coffee cup in their garbage can, but in fact, they invite you to use their
Yeah,
recycling.
they don't
versus-
necessarily say that I can't throw
But
out,
again,
my
it's-
couch or.
It's really, I mean, it's why the state took out the barrels that used to be along Route 5 north of town, those pullouts, because people were dumping their, big black plastic bags of garbage into them.
Yeah,
Not to mention babies, but we will talk about that.
I'm just mentioning. I just don't know if it's clear that that's what she meant in that sentence, as opposed to,
Well, I'm open to any editorial suggestions.
I don't know how you phrase it in such a way that you mean like, household garbage as opposed to,
Like if you brought your garbage to it rather than,
like, say I have garbage in my car and I just like gather it up because I'm at the co-op and I wanna throw it out. I mean, does that count as
Or-
household garbage?
I mean, I realize the Sunoco station is in Dummerston, or if you pull into Rods and you take the trash out of the bottom of your car and put it in the,
And that's bad.
well,
Or
except
is it
that,
like,
you
is
know,
it like a gray area?
effectively, you know, Greg Winchester's your landlord when you're doing that in this sentence. You're getting permission from the person whose barrel you're throwing it in. And
Okay,
I don't know how Greg feels about people emptying what's on the floor of their car into his trash can, but
yeah,
I'm sure he's pretty used to it.
I don't know, it's like, there's like a bunch of candy wrappers on the bottom,
Yeah.
but you know, I'm here and I'm gassing up and I'm bored, so.
I mean, I guess there's almost an implicit invitation by having that receptacle there, and if he doesn't want you to put your stuff, you ought to put a sign on it saying,
Don't do that.
don't
Or
put the
take
stuff
them
from,
away.
if it's on the floor of your car, leave it there.
Okay, maybe it's fine, I just,
I-
it
no,
was the
I'm-
one thing that I was thinking that.
I'm also not, I'm not trying to press this through. I mean, if it needs more work, or, if you wanna ruminate on it and email me a suggestion on rewording it, as I
I
said.
don't have a good wording for it, cause I can think of scenarios that I can think of loopholes endlessly, right? So I don't necessarily need to reword it, I just didn't know if that was the way everybody else was reading it or not.
Anyway, so,
So do you want another week to go over it and put it on the agenda for next week? Or no?
Yeah. I
Okay.
guess,
yeah, no, I think we should take as much time. I mean, these ordinances are being really problematic as we go through them and it's worthy of careful consideration. Because otherwise we end up, somebody 50 years from now is going to be reading it saying, what were they thinking?
okay.
Any public comment on that, Mr. Chairman?
Just to say, Mr. Chairman, that the clause that I questioned at the last meeting has been ably clarified. Thank you.
All right. We adopt fire department service reimbursement, or no, alcohol beverages, let's see what
So basically, you're just readopting because there were some changes made and it didn't get posted in time legally in the paper. So, the public hearing notice is in your packet along with the controlling the use of alcoholic beverages on town property.
I think there was a formatting glitch when this got converted to PDF, so it bumped Bex on the next page.
It's okay, because I'm gonna end up putting it on a different, it's in your folder to sign tonight.
Oh, okay.
It's in a different format. I made it pretty.
It was pretty to begin with.
I like that.
Made it prettier.
Yeah, but I also put the dates in where I could. And that makes it difficult because, and I'm not sure if that adoption history, is that necessary to be in the document?
Not that I'm aware of. I think, I think I got it off of what VLCT was pushing as a format for ordinances. It's a way to establish the bona fides of the ordinance right on it. So you show that you adopted it as the law requires. But
Right.
I don't think you're absolutely required to have that on the document.
Right, because, posting it in public places, that happens later. You're gonna have to handwrite that date in there.
It's more of a checklist, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's good to have, it's good to have proof that you did it.
So maybe that's on a separate
Yeah.
page and then it goes after the fact.
As I originally did it, it was, but then the formatting got away from me.
Okay. So moving forward, we'll make sure that's on a separate page.
So I move to adopt the ordinance controlling the use of alcoholic beverages on town property.
Second.
Any public comment? Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Chairman, Vermont statute allows you to prohibit both the possession and the consumption of alcohol on town property. The ordinance as written prohibits possession, but does not prohibit consumption. Now, that would mean that, as I understand it, that would mean that if I'm on town property and I am inebriated, but I do not have any container in my possession, I am exempt from your ordinance. Now, this may be what you want, but I'm simply pointing out that my understanding is you are leaving out one of the two important things. One is possession and the other is consumption. Because in order to be inebriated, one must have done both, in my understanding.
Well, this ordinance is most definitely not a public drunkenness ordinance. If you want to get yourself liquored up at home and then stumble down to the ball field, this ordinance isn't going to touch that.
As long as you walk.
Well, you see, Councilor, my question here is because it says a public possession, right? Okay, but possession presumably entails inebriation, but the statute, but your ordinance is being defined in terms only of possession. Now, what if I set the container over there and I'm over here? As per your ordinance, I am not in possession.
You are. It's within your control. If you set it on the bench and stand up, it's still technically within your control.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to raise the point in case there's a hole in your ordinance. You believe there isn't, and I have no reason to.
Well, as Eileen points out, you can always find a loophole.
I can have a bottle of wine in my possession and I can feed it to you.
Wow, that was
Well,
But then I'm still in possession of it, so.
yeah, I would resist that because I
Okay.
don't drink.
Okay, so, no, I don't wanna regulate the,
Yeah.
blood alcohol level of individuals walking down Main Street.
Yeah.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, fire department service reimbursement ordinance. Budget.
Okay, now this, to clarify the confusion that was presented the last time, this just authorizes us to establish reimbursement rates and collect, basically, to engage that billing firm or do however we want to collect. It doesn't, the rates get set in a policy. The difference being, of course, as we are becoming very familiar, ordinances are more difficult to adopt and to amend than policies are. So the town manager sent me a couple of examples, Reedsboro and Bennington, and when I read through them, I realized they were doing exactly the same thing. They had an ordinance that authorized them to collect, and then they had a policy that set the rate. Right now, the policy that we have is what the one billing agency that we've been in contact with so far, what they recommend as the reimbursement rates. I think, well, the town manager is going to do a little digging and see if there's anything better out there, but whatever we do, I think that's the way to go. We need a flexible structure that we can update as we need it.
Those are the minimums that they were willing to go with, right?
National rates, yes.
Yeah.
It's sort of like with medical, usual and customary. That's what their recommended stuff was what they consider to be sort of the middle of the average range in this region. You know, and I presume they've got the experience to back that up, so.
I noticed too with third-party vendors, the second company's in Pennsylvania, but they're just EMS, not fire, so it's all over the map. I don't know if you're gonna get an apples to apples,
Right.
but, you know, and the question is that, you know, we have fire and EMS, so are we looking to get reimbursement from both? Or are you just looking at one and not the other? So those are questions you'll have to consider.
The ordinance would allow for either or both.
Okay.
Because it, you know, if it's available out here, we need to be trying to maximize our return on these things, because these are expensive services to run.
Right.
So I move to adopt an ordinance establishing and implementing a program to charge mitigation rates for the deployment of emergency and non-emergency services by the fire department for services provided, rendered by, for the Putney Fire Department.
Second.
Any public comment, Mr. Fairman?
Perhaps I'm getting ahead of myself here. Shouldn't there be a discussion among you folks?
Do we have any discussion?
Okay, Mr. Chairman. This is actually from the perspective of Putney property owners and renters. This is an extraordinarily serious decision. And I am now, you will be reading Severson versus City of Burlington. There's no doubt, because it is binding precedent, that I am exercising a constitutional right here. And I'm going to need to take a little bit of time to do so. Now, I feel that I need to first alert the public that 5% of Town of Putney voters can petition a special town meeting as a permissive referendum approving or annulling any Putney Fire and EMS Department billing ordinance that our Town of Putney Select Board have adopted and enacted, 24 VSA Section 1973. Okay, why? Quote, Section 2 of your ordinance. A claim shall be filed to the responsible parties through their insurance carrier. In some circumstances, the responsible parties will be billed directly, unquote. Each Putney property taxpayer pays a small share of funding Putney Fire and EMS Department services, so that those who have to receive these services do not also suffer financially for having received these services, which is exactly how insurance works. Our Town of Putney Select Board are proposing to bill recipients for services provided by our Putney Fire and EMS Department that already is fully funded by Town of Putney taxpayers, because Vermont municipalities are not allowed to budget for a deficit, 24 VSA Section 1523. According to my insurance agents, who represent 29 homeowners and renters insurance carriers, not all insurance carriers sell coverage of fire department service charges, and those that do set a limit of $500 to $1,000 with no deductible. Check your policies. My insurance carrier's broad form renter's policy states, quote, fire department service charge. We will pay up to $500 for any one loss for the fire department service charges billed by a government entity or a fire department for the response to save or protect covered property from a peril insured against. This coverage is additional insurance. No deductible applies to this coverage, unquote. If the Putney Fire and EMS Department were dispatched to my apartment to save or protect my covered property from a peril insured against, how much would my fire department service charge be as per the price list recommended by the proposed billing and collections contractor? 2 fire engines at $554 per hour and 2 hours for the run, including preparation afterward for another run, equals $2,216 less $500 insured equals $1,716 additional personal financial loss. The proposed billing and collections contractor will deduct 22% of the total, which equals $487.52 for sending this bill. Beyond the town of Putney public water system, there also will be a bill for a tanker. You are proposing to change our Putney Fire and EMS department from a cost center to a profit center, adding to our growing general fund surplus. Billing recipients for Putney Fire and EMS department services for which they already have paid via their or their landlord's property tax bills is double billing, pretending that the department is independent, as if it were non-profit or for-profit. I have a copy of the proposed billing and collections contract. Our Town of Putney Select Board have copied proposed billing rates from Exhibit A, referenced by and attached to the California Billing and Collections Contractor's proposed contract. These billing rates bear no relation whatsoever to the Town of Putney's actual and known costs that already are funded by property taxpayers. This contract states that the Town of Putney, quote, appoints the company as client's attorney in fact for the following purposes: to bill and collect all revenue earned by and due to client in connection with client's provision of emergency services, unquote. This contract includes an airtight clause stipulating that any resulting legal action must be brought in and litigated under the laws of the state of California, which will be prohibitive for any local property owner, renter, or resident who may forfeit protections under Vermont laws. Commercial billing and collection services contracting with the Town of Putney to do Putney Fire and EMS Department billing and collections for a percentage of the totals billed are incentivized to maximize dispatching of fire engines and trucks to bill and collect as much money as possible, as is the Town of Putney. Now, mutual aid. Our Putney Fire and EMS Department receives mutual aid from and may provide mutual aid to nearby towns in Vermont, New Hampshire, and Massachusetts. Each mutual aid property taxpayer pays a small share of funding mutual aid fire department services so that those who have to receive these services do not also suffer financially for having received these services, which again is exactly how insurance works. If one municipality can bill a recipient for fire department services, so can every municipality that provided mutual aid fire department services regarding this recipient. Will the Town of Putney share collected Putney Fire and EMS Department service charges with other fire and or EMS departments that responded as mutual aid? Will other towns whose fire and or EMS departments responded in the Town of Putney as mutual aid also bill Putney property owners and renters? Will the Town of Putney bill property owners and renters in other towns where the Putney Fire and EMS Department provided mutual aid? What if this town is in Massachusetts or New Hampshire? How much in total will the recipient of these fire department service charges be billed? You have not considered these matters. You also have not considered the matter that I raised here regarding mutual aid of differential treatment, where perhaps Putney people are billed, but when you go to mutual aid, you don't bill over there. Now that is not equal protection under the law. This needs a lot more consideration before you adopt it, but I've already pointed out to the public, and I'm going to arrange for this to be posted in various places, that we can petition a permissive referendum to rescind your ordinance should you choose to adopt it. Because I've spent several days researching this and putting together this 2-page memo, which I have read the whole thing to you. Thank you for listening, because it is long, but it is all that is necessary to say what needs to be said. There are many implications here that have not been considered. And especially in terms of, as it begins, it says, a claim shall be filed through their insurance carrier. Wonderful. I will get $500 from my insurance carrier. My agents, who are the Richards Group, they are the largest around here, they're the ones who represent 29 companies. They say it ranges from nil, because they don't write the coverage, to $1,000. But any bill is going to be a lot more than that. So someone who has suffered a loss because they had a fire or something like that is told, guess what? You paid your taxes to have a fire department, or your landlord paid taxes to have a fire department. But you know what? If you need to use the fire department, it's going to cost you, and your insurance is not going to cover very much, but that's not our problem. And recall that the company that you are looking at present, I have a copy of the contract. They say it's going to be under California law. Now, I'm not a lawyer, but in my corporate career, I worked with a lot of lawyers on contracts. And the question they always raised is, what's actually going to happen? Now, this is an airtight clause because it actually says that no other state's laws will apply. It will be done under the laws of the state of California, which, as we all know, is as far from here as Europe. Okay, so we have to hire an attorney who's admitted to the California bar. There's probably not very many of those in Vermont, and in order to have a legal action, and it may be that we have protections under Vermont law. I don't know. I've not researched this, and I'm not a lawyer. But this has not been considered. You are not considering the obligation that under which you are putting property owners and renters in Putney who may suffer, who may need the services of our fire department, which is supported by taxes. There's something very, very wrong here, and it is that somebody decided it would be a good idea, but it has not been thought through. So I'm not going to oppose your adopting this evening, but I am going to, if necessary, do everything I can to make sure that we have a special town meeting to discuss this, where members of the public can say, here's what's going to happen to me. As I said, check your policies. Mine, I did, $500. My agent tells me it may be zero, depends on who your insurer is, never more than $1,000. In other words, people are going to get a huge hit, and the question they're going to ask themselves is, didn't I pay for this with my taxes? The Putney Fire Department is not independent. It is a department of the town of Putney. Now, everything else that we got, for example, when they plow the roads, we don't get a bill for plowing our road. Everybody's road gets plowed. It takes some time, but everybody's road gets plowed. If we need a road repair on the town road where we live, we let Lenny know, and they come and take care of it. They don't send us a bill. We're saying our fire department is going to be an exception to this. Our fire department is going to send us bills, and they say, oh, we'll bill your insurance. Well, I just explained to you that the insurance is not going to cover it. And, in my case, I would be left with a bill of $1,700. And meanwhile, the billing and collections agency is getting nearly $500 just to send a bill. That, quite frankly, I'm a veteran of the business world. If we were looking at some contractor who said, we're going to charge you that much to bill, we would simply say, that is patently ridiculous. And we're going to try not, if we're facing them, we're going to try not to laugh here, but you're not even, not only you're not in the ballpark, you're not in the same city. So, as professionals in a field that is not mine say, guide yourselves accordingly.
Thank you. So I guess we need to enlighten and put some stuff on the table that this is not to bill town residents for EMS calls. If you have a fire in your apartment, if somebody has a fire in their house, we're not looking to bill. This is for the mostly primary is what we're looking for is the interstate when we're out there, because it's costing the town of Putney residents money.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I am aware of this. However, that is not what the contract states. The contract states, and I quote again, the town of Putney appoints the company as client's attorney in fact for the following purposes.
Mr. Chairman, just the contract isn't under consideration this evening. We haven't even chosen a contractor.
Right.
This ordinance doesn't specify any contractor or any choice of law. Doesn't say anything about California in this. That's a whole separate issue that we haven't even gotten to yet.
Yes, indeed, indeed you are correct, Counselor. However, your section 2 does not say a claim shall be filed for highway accidents. Your section 2 says a claim shall be filed to the responsible parties through their insurance carrier. In some circumstances, the responsible party will be billed directly. It does not specify which incidents will be billed, so therefore, all incidents are being billed. And
Potentially.
And you do not actually have discretion to selectively enforce an ordinance. So if you want to say that it's for highway accidents, say it's for highway accidents.
We are just creating the possibility of billing. There's nothing about this that makes any particular bill mandatory. What it does is that it says if we're going to bill, we send it first to your insurance company, but you're creating an elaborate straw man here that we haven't even gotten to half of the things that you're raising as issues here. All this does is gives us the authority to start billing. Who we might use as a billing service, it's entirely, or what their contract might specify or any of that. And the insurance issue, it's not our insurance. It's the person who rolls their car off the interstate. We're billing their insurance. What the limits of their policy are, we have no control over that. All we're looking for is to get something. And the fundamental issue that you've already paid for the service, you haven't. You've paid for the existence of a fire department and staff and equipment there. You haven't paid for them to roll out the door. When you have an accident and those people go into motion to respond to it, that's a separate issue. We make the equipment and the personnel available. If your circumstances are such, the event that occurs to you requires an emergency response, that service is there for you. But you haven't paid for that response. You've paid for the availability of the service.
Ably argued, Counselor, so I have a question for you. If somebody in Putney has a fire in their house, do they get a bill from the Putney Fire Department?
You're really focusing on an issue that we aren't really concerned with right now. We're not talking about billing homeowners right now. But if there is a fire that somebody, I don't know, maybe they set fire to their own house to burn down, to try and collect their own insurance. Well, I think we might send them a bill if they're that dumb. Of course, if they're that dumb, they got so many other problems that we're small potatoes in their life, I'm sure. But yeah, we're just trying to find ways to keep providing the service that the people of the town of Putney want.
With due respect, Counselor, quoting this, Section 2, a claim shall be filed.
I know, and that you keep reading it. This is now, I think, the third time you've read it. All that says is, if there's a claim, we're going to send it to your insurance company.
Rather
That's
than
not
directly.
what it says, Counselor, because if we were in court, a claim shall be filed. That is unconditional.
A claim shall be filed with an insurance company. It doesn't say you have to have a claim. If you want to file a claim, send it to the insurance company. That's all the point of that section is.
Oh, really? So therefore, a claim shall be filed through their insurance carrier.
And maybe followed up with the individual as well if the insurance isn't adequate. But all of these things are discretionary here. I know you love the word shall, but all the shall says is send it first to the insurance company. If you want to file a claim, send it to the insurance company. It's actually a protection on the individual. We don't come after you individually. We're going to send it to your insurance company.
Well, we both know that shall.
Excuse me.
I am exercising a constitutional right here.
I am on the select board and I have my hand up. So I would like to move on the grounds that this has been rehashed several times and the explanation has been forwarded. And as Mr. Thurman has pointed out, all of the ordinances that we adopted today can be petitioned for a special town meeting. You have to get that petition in within 44 days, and then you can have a town meeting to repeal any of the ordinances. And at that point, we can have an informational meeting and explain ourselves, because I'd like to move on.
I agree. All in favor? Aye.
Thank you. Now we can debate it in a proper venue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All right. I guess we're going into executive session.
Thank you.
1 VSA 313A, 1F appeals, and 1 VSA 13A 2 lease agreements. And we're inviting Karen, Jordy, and Doug.
I make a motion to go into executive session under 1 VSA 313A1F appeals and 1 VSA 313A2 lease agreement.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Alright, I need to use the bathroom.
Back.
Okay, so I make a motion to formally accept the stipulation of settlement of the April 1st, 2024 grand list valuation of the Stetson Enterprise property as $189,600.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
All right. I make a motion to adjourn.
All right, next meeting, June 25th. Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.